Good evening, everyone. We have a good crowd here today. Thank you for being here with us for our October 9th, 2024 Board of Douglas County Commissioners 5:30 business meeting. There are paper copies of the agenda back by the door if anyone wants them, but I think many of us are here for a very special recognition. We're going to start with that. We're going to recognize Kate Dineen for her many years of service at Douglas County, and we're going to start with having Commissioner Kelly read a letter.
A letter of appreciation, and I've known Kate for a long time. I consider her a very good friend. We served on the Lawrence Cultural Arts Commission longer than I think either one of us would like to admit ago. Like being on it was a great treat. But so I'm really pleased to read this letter of appreciation for Kate's service. This certificate of appreciation is proudly presented to honor Kate Dineen for 35 years of service to Douglas County. Her vision, relentless dedication, spirited teamwork, and ability to motivate others have been a source of endless inspiration. Her heartfelt efforts for Douglas County emergency management have not gone unnoticed and have driven the emergency management program to success. Kate began her journey in 1993 as an EM volunteer. Working as a Skywarn storm spotter, Kate helped to provide timely and accurate reports of severe weather to the National Weather Service. This in turn helped keep Douglas County safe by providing ground truth information to meteorologists for life-saving warning information. Over the next several years, Kate's contributions and role in EM continued to expand. As a duty officer, Kate worked week-long on-call shifts and was the primary staff member responsible for monitoring severe weather and responding to incidents on behalf of EM. Before an automated system was installed, emergency management had to manually monitor the Kansas River. Kate would perform the river gauge readings, occasionally up to every 4 hours during a potential flooding event, to provide critical situational awareness for the National Weather Service and our community. In addition to being a duty officer, Kate also became the Community Emergency Response Team, or CERT, coordinator. In Kate's tenure as CERT coordinator, she significantly expanded and improved the Douglas County program. Kate's leadership was critical during the 2019 EF4 tornado, sorry about that, when she helped to initiate a donations process throughout Douglas County Community Foundation. In 2021, Kate led hundreds of volunteers and developed flow patterns for 26 drive-through COVID-19 vaccination clinics. Kate continues to develop and share her CERT experience across the state and country. She regularly teaches CERT programs throughout Kansas, including Train the Trainer and program management courses. She currently serves as the elected representative of FEMA Region 7 to the National CERT Association Board of Directors. Kate continuously pursued additional trainings and education to grow in her role. In 2014, she completed the Emergency Management Institute Basic Academy. Through participation in dozens of exercises and real-life incidents and activations, Kate became a highly qualified Emergency Operations Center manager and earned certification as a Kansas Certified Emergency Manager. In addition to her own training, Kate wanted to make sure to share it with others. She has spearheaded groundbreaking work with local libraries and their role in emergency preparedness and response. She pursued training and advocated programming that recognizes the importance of the mental health of all responders to disasters. Beyond her impressive accolades and accomplishments, Kate will be most missed for her supportive and inclusive attitude toward the volunteers in her program. In the words of Paula Hadeke, sorry if I got that wrong, longtime EM volunteer, Kate has never wavered in her focus for helping the families of Douglas County be prepared for any disaster that might come their way. Kate was not only a superb leader, she walked beside each one of us and kept us going no matter what was going on in our personal lives, because Kate truly cares about each and every one of us. The Douglas County Board of County Commissioners would like to formally recognize and sincerely thank Kate Dineen for her many years of service to Douglas County and our community.
Kate, thank you for your many years with us in Douglas County. I just want to say three things in addition to the letter that was just read, is three things about you. You are very persistent, and everybody knows Kate's very persistent. You get the job done. You are a natural leader. You're dependable. You're where you're supposed to be on your own responsible time, and you're always willing to step up and be there for other people, and you're empathetic. You are there. You recognize other people's emotions. You sense that, and you lend a helping hand. So, Kate, thank you. I just want to give you a gift before the commissioners give you your presentation or your certificate recognition. And this is from the emergency management team to you. And yeah. And I don't know if you wanted to say anything, Kate, or not.
Yes,
Okay.
I do.
All right.
It's me after all, right? Thank you, Patrick, for that long list of things, most of which I've forgotten. I wouldn't be here if I was not standing on the shoulders of some very important people and work that they did. One of whom is a former director of emergency management, Terry Axman. Now she was Terry Smith at the time. And she had the vision and the patience to develop a fabulous emergency management department for our county. And that has been wonderful for everybody as time has gone on. I also wouldn't be standing here if not for the groundwork that Sheila Megason did early on. She was one of the first coordinators of the CERT program in the early 2000s when it started. And also I need to thank the former deputy director, Jillian Rodrigue, who along with Terry developed this great group of people, promoted emergency management at a time when it wasn't well known in our community, and created an atmosphere where our volunteers felt that there was someone there who had their back all the time. Without those people, I wouldn't be standing here. And when Terry had to leave in 2017, I don't think she realized how much that groundwork that she had done with Jillian and what Sheila had done to get the CERT group going. I don't think she understood how important that was going to be. And as you mentioned, 2019, we had the tornado, which Jillian got us through. Then we had a flood a month later, one of two that summer, that Jillian got us through. And then we had COVID. And that's when my team, all you fabulous people back here, really stood up. The CERT team were the first people to man the phones when everything shut down on March 17th. They didn't know all the health stuff, but they were there to answer the phones and talk to our community when our community needed someone that they could reach out to. Eventually, the health department was able to bring in people who had more knowledge. And that time, our CERT group changed, and they went to doing the testing so that people who wanted to go visit friends, older relatives for the holidays could be tested before we had the vaccine and find out if they were basically clean to go or if they would be taking COVID with them. We did that through the winter, lots of stories there. And then we were part of the first vaccinations before we ended up doing the mass vaccination clinic. The mass vaccination clinic was a huge thing, and we could not have done any of this without our CERT and our other Douglas County volunteers. So thank you all for this, but I'm only here because of all these other people. So thank you.
Thank you. for the volunteers and staff that are here that want to help us celebrate Kate with a small reception, if you go outside into a room next door over here, there'll be some cookies.
With that, you cleared the room. Thanks again all for being here to celebrate a really important employee and the work that she's done for all of us. That does move us on with the rest of our agenda. We have a consent agenda followed by general public comment and then a regular agenda. I will cover a few rules for when we get to our general public comment. So we have a few rules and we try to do our best to enforce these rules consistently without regard to the point of view expressed by the speaker. And those that are each would have 3 minutes of speaking time. Individuals may not donate unused speaking time, and all comments must address topics within the jurisdiction of the County Commission. We also prohibit public comments that are threatening, aggressively hostile, or belligerent, fighting words, slander, or speech that invades the privacy of individuals, unreasonably loud, disruptive, or repetitive, or that interrupt or substantially interfere with the board's ability to conduct county business. We do reserve the right to mute or remove any speaker who violates these public comment rules. At that time, we'd ask for your full name and address for our meeting minutes and to address your comments to the commission. Please do know that comments received by the commission during our meetings do not necessarily represent the views of Douglas County government, but we value the input. We don't usually respond to general public comment on the spot, but if you leave your contact information with county staff, we'll try and get specific questions answered. After that, we have our regular event agenda, and for each action item, we'll hear from staff or an applicant, followed by questions from the commission, and then open that item also up for public comment that's relevant to that item. Once public comment is closed, we bring the item back to the commission for further discussion and a vote. Lastly, a recording of this meeting will be available on the county's YouTube page and website. So with that, we do have a consent agenda with 6 items this evening. First, I'll ask commissioners, are there any items you would like to pull from the consent agenda for further discussion? Is there anyone here in the room who would like to pull an item from the consent agenda for further discussion? And Sarah, do we have anyone online?
We do. Melanie Kaufman, I'll move her into the panel. I'm wondering if I didn't. Robin, can you try to see if you can move Melanie into the panel? Thanks. Or now, yep, you made me co-host, so I can do it. All right, Melanie, we're trying to move you into the panel. If you'll accept. Yep, there you are. You're in the panel. If you can come off mute and provide public comment.
Actually, we're just at consent agenda. If there's
Oh,
an item.
right. Sorry. If you can tell us which consent agenda item you want to pull off.
Yes, thank you. 2.2, please.
Thank you. 2.2. Are any others, or Sarah, do we have anyone else?
No.
Okay, with that, I would entertain a motion for the balance of our consent agenda.
Commissioner Kelly, motion to approve consent agenda items 1, 3, 4, 5, and 6.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. That brings us to item 2.2. This is a Public Works item. Do we have someone here from Public Works? I believe we do.
You do.
First, I'd start with commissioners. Are there any questions that you have regarding the contract for 2025 pavement maintenance projects? Okay. I will open this up for public comment. First, I'll ask in the room, is there anyone here who would like to give public comment on item 2.2 from the consent agenda? All right. I would guess, Melanie, do you have a public comment you'd like to provide on item 2.2?
Yes, please.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. I'm wondering can you tell me the evaluation method used to determine this particular bid? It appears that it might be the cheapest one, and looking at, I think it's page 2 of, right after the memo. So the schedule of prices. I'm not sure that the bid chosen is the best one in terms of durability and quality of the asphalt and the chip and seal. It looks like it's more, it was more chosen because it was cheaper, but if I'm looking at this right, the traffic control and the mobilization, which to me that means like the logistics of the product, moving it around, is much more expensive for Vance Brothers, and maybe the type of product could be different. I'm wondering if we're comparing apples and apples with the two products, or for instance, on traffic control, the first bid, 80,000 Advance Brothers versus 25,000. That seems really significant to me. So I'm wondering if we're paying for traffic control or if we're really paying for durability and quality. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else online, Sarah, who'd like to give public comment on item 2.2?
No.
Okay. That looks like, Chad, are you interested in having some conversation around between the two bids?
Yeah, I can address, I think, the question there. So these projects that we put together and put out to bid we follow a KDOT format for, putting together standard bid items that show up in the KDOT specification books, so that then when somebody bids on something, it's clear what they're bidding on across the board. But the downfall of that is that there are a lot of things involved in a project that don't necessarily show up in a specific bid item. And so contractors will choose different bid items to hide those costs. And we see that on every single project. So that's why you see variability in how they approach these different bid items. You'd also see that in mobilization. Mobilization is where they get paid to show up with their equipment. And there are other items. Traffic control will be one that has a lot of flexibility in it. I could see them putting costs in there that other contractors are putting somewhere else. I'm trying to think of other examples. On bigger projects, we have, landscaping and stabilization at the end of the project, erosion control. Those things often get lumped into different things. So we don't really necessarily want to see that those items are the same from one to the other. We do bid the project and take the low bid, and we know that Advance Brothers is qualified. They've done this project before, and so we're happy with the bid.
Commissioners, do you have any questions?
Chad, since you came up, can you give us an estimate? I don't need an exact number of how many of these types of bids that you look at annually, like KDOT, in that format for these things?
Sure. We do that for every single CIP project. We do it for the pavement overlay. We do it for striping. We even do it for materials purchases. So we may look at 20 or 30 bids a year that all follow this format.
And you're very aware of our policies and expectations around bid process and follow that bid process each time you recommend a bid to us. Is that correct?
That's exactly right. There's a statutory section on how we are supposed to bid projects, depending on what kind of project it is. And in this case, it's a fairly straightforward one-step project, so pretty straightforward.
Thank you.
Any other questions? No. I would entertain a motion.
Commissioner Kelly, motion to accept the bid and awarding a contract to Advance Brothers, Inc. for project 2025-01 pavement chip and seal, including the two additional alternate bids in the total project amount of $1,111,370.86, and authorize the Public Works Director to approve change orders up to 10% of the contract amount.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Thank you. That brings us to general public comment. Is there anyone in the room who would like to give general public comment this evening? Seeing none in the room, do we have anyone online?
I'm not seeing any hands raised online for general public comment.
So with that, we'll close general public comment and bring back to our regular agenda. And I believe, Sarah, will you start us off?
Yeah, I'm going to add Milena Mays to the panel with McGrath Consulting. And I believe Milena and Michelle and Brooke are going to give the presentation today. So Brooke Sauer is our finance manager and Michelle Spreer is our HR manager. Milena, as soon as you're in the panel, you should be able to share your screen and get started.
Wonderful. Can you hear me okay?
We can. Thanks, Milena.
Very good. Thank you. Just give me a minute here. All right. Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's good to be in front of the commission again. My name is Melena Halverson Mays, and I'm a senior consultant with McGrath Human Resources Group. I spoke with you briefly regarding the study a couple of months ago, and a lot of work has happened between that event or that evening in June to our finality. And I have to say that I want to just give a congratulations as well to Kate Deneen. And that is an absolute example from a consultant's perspective of everything that the organization is doing right. You're doing it correctly, because without your human capital, you would not be able to provide the programs and services that you provide to your constituents. And so I'm pleased to be able to speak with you this evening about how we can strengthen the county and being an employer of choice for all of your current employees and your future applicants as well. Some of these slides that I'm going to have here this evening are actually slides that you saw back in June. And so I want to refresh everyone's memory and bring you along to the study conclusion. And then if you have any questions along the way, please feel free to ask. I don't know that I'll be able to see you, but you can certainly interject, or we can save questions until the end. Just to rewrap what the objectives of the study is for the county is to help confirm your pay philosophy. We talked about that the last time that I spoke with you, and then to take a look at how the county is compensating against the external market. And with that was also to take a look at a position analysis and make sure that all the positions are aligned both by market along with based on position responsibilities and internal equity. And knowing that, we knew that there was likely going to be some compression that resulted from our outcomes, and we're going to be talking about that, how you're going to address that at the end of our session here this afternoon. And we'll also talk with you about the cost estimates. I do have in the back of the report, if you have a copy of that, it's about 40 pages long, and the last 15 or so pages is part of your benefits. We are not going to focus on that here this evening. We are going to look at just your compensation. And I like to talk with individuals about, from a bigger picture perspective, you have wages and benefits, and you have recognition and well-being for your employees, but you can't necessarily take all of that in all at once. And so your administration will bring the benefits back at a later time after you have been able to work through all of the wage recommendations. So with that, just another high-level review. You have already seen this. We met with all of your department directors at the onset of the project to understand programs, operations, and services at a high level. And then we did a paper review of what you have going on at the county in terms of job descriptions, your salary schedule, any kind of related policies. And then we engaged the employees and asked them to complete a position questionnaire so we could receive additional information about what their responsibilities are, so that we could run an in-depth analysis on each of the positions. And at the same time that the employees were doing that, then we went out to the market and we collected that survey data. We're going to look at it very briefly here again. And once I was done with everything, after I did that analysis and I overlaid all of the position information, then I came back and literally I came into the county and I sat for a couple of days in a conference room and met with all of your department heads individually. It was a real good, productive couple of days for some discussions to explain those recommendations before we put them into final form. I will say at this point that there are a couple of positions that the departments are asking me to do one last re-review on. We are at 99% completion. We will get those handful reviewed here probably within the next week. It's not going to delay what it is that we are asking of the commission here this evening. Just to summarize, this is the public comparable organizations that we utilized. So when I talk about the market for the next couple of slides, you might ask, who is that market? These are the public comparables that we utilize to develop your market data set, and you will see that they are local comparables. So with that, then let's take a look and just a refresh of what we found when we went out to the market. We talked about this in June, where we compare the county's salaries against that market. We put that into a comp ratio. It's a comparison ratio between Douglas County and the aggregate of what we collected. And we approached this as how do we going to look at the that was poor English, I apologize. How are we going to look at you against the market? And oftentimes we'll look at organizations at the 50th percentile, but the county has a history of alignment, a little bit more assertive in the market. And so historically you have poised yourselves at the 70th percentile. So that is the same alignment to the market that we utilized when we ran this analysis. And overall, this is a summary of what we found. This is in the body of the final report, and you saw this back in June. When we take a look at how you're doing against the 70th percentile, we clearly see that you've got about 54%, or about half of your positions, that are under that particular mark, and you've got another 17% that are at risk. They're probably not quite market competitive based upon the 70th percentile, and so we want to really pay attention to those. Overall, you've got about 30%, or 1/3 of your positions, that are doing okay. And what that means then is, dependent upon how the rest of the range is looking, maybe you're going to have some positions that are sitting okay in the market and are not going to need substantial change. But this does tell us, at the minimums, if you have individual departments that are coming in and needing to hire above that minimum rate, this is explaining why that is happening. It's because you've got the majority of your minimums are no longer market competitive. Then what we do is we take a look at your midpoint, and the trend here is very, very consistent, where you've got about half of your positions clearly under the market. You've got another percentage that are really on the cusp, on the bubble. And what that means is if you don't do anything with those salary ranges, they will fall behind in the market within the next year or so. And then you've got about 1/3 of your positions that at that midpoint, they are holding their own against the market. This is what your maximums look like. So again, the trend is very, very consistent. So overall, what we find here is that you've got about 1/3 of your positions that are not going to need a lot of movement. The majority of your other salary ranges are likely going to need some adjustment. And that gave your administration time to financially prepare for, yes, this is indeed going to probably take some financial resources to resolve. So when we last spoke in June, one of the items that we had talked about was that 70th percentile, and what exactly does that mean? So when we look at an organization, and this is a pretty large policy question, we call it a compensation philosophy, otherwise compensation strategy, of where do we want to poise you against that external market. Now, we use the 70th percentile in our analysis because that was historically where the county aligned itself. And really the question was, is that where you want to be again in the market? Do you want to continue to be a leader? And it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be the leader. You're not going to be the top, and so that means that there's still going to be some communities that are going to continue to pay maybe a little bit more than you, but we want you to be poised above that average market. We want you to be an employer of choice. You're a very large organization, you're very complex, and you have a lot of other options in your area. And so your human capital is not only looking at Douglas County, but they're also looking at a lot of other communities, and you also have the private sector as well. So by elevating or making sure that we continue to align you at the 70th percentile, that is going to help you retain your personnel, and we do know that you're going to lose some folks because you've got retirements. That is going to happen. We can't stop that from happening. So we want you to be able to be poised competitively in the market whenever you do need to find a replacement personnel. So with that, what we did was we established your ranges at the 70th percentile. And that means then for employees that might be listening in this evening, that means that Douglas County is not necessarily going to be the highest paid, but you are going to be very competitively paid. So with that, we built your new model. It is a range system, so it's going to look very similar to what the county currently has. We've established you at the 70th percentile, and we created 22 pay grades. There's a little bit of difference between the model that we are recommending to the model that you currently have now. We're going to be giving you three data points within that salary range, and those data points are very important because you will have what's called a minimum, a control point, and a maximum. The control point is not a midpoint. So if you've gone off and done your math, you'll quickly see that number is not midway. It is actually only 15% from the minimum. And the reason why we have done it that way, it's very strategic. That really truly is the market point for your employees. And what we want to do is try to close the gap between the minimum or the hiring rate to that market point. Because if employees have to wait too long to get to that market point within a salary range, they will leave. They will go look for another opportunity because they also know the value and the worth of their position in those other organizations. And so they take all of that training and all of all of those years of experience with them when they leave, and we want to try to prevent that from happening. Now, what we did then, because we are being, I will say, I don't want to say we're being aggressive, but we're being assertive at the front end of the salary schedule. We are backing off the maximums a touch. Your current ranges are at a 50% spread from minimum to maximum, and we're going to be narrowing that down just a touch, down to 45%, just to make sure that those maximums don't get too high. We still will recommend that the employees are going to progress with your annual performance adjustments along with an annual cost of living in order, that's what you need in order to keep those ranges competitive with the market. When you take a look at the recommendations, you might see that there are going to be some title adjustments. And the other area is that I did spend some time talking with department heads about if they need levels in certain parts of the organization, or if we need to get rid of some levels. And so you might see that looks a little bit different. Some of that still needs to be defined in final form with human resources. And so some of those are, they're on there just so that you can see, but there isn't necessarily going to be an incumbent in that position until after all of that has been developed with job descriptions a little bit later. With that said, this is an important piece, and again, it's not only for the commission, but it might also be for employees that are listening in this evening, because there's often a question that comes: how in the world did you decide to place a position in a particular pay grade? That doesn't necessarily make any sense to me because of the variations in the industries that you have within some of these pay grades. And the answer is, you're absolutely right. There may not be a reason why they're in the pay grade together. We're not necessarily saying that they align within the pay grade. We utilize many different factors when we are creating our recommendations. And the first one really is what that external market is telling us, because we want to make sure that these salary ranges are going to be competitive for your retention and your recruiting needs. But then we also take a look at the position analysis. What was that information that was provided by the employees who hold the positions? And those documents were also reviewed by the management team within each of those departments to make sure, yes, indeed, that is an accurate reflection of their responsibilities. So we utilize that factor as well. There may be some internal comparability factors that come into play as well. And a common one that we often talk about will be support positions that you might have across the organization. And is one administrative support similar to the other administrative support in other departments? That this process helps us vet through that to ensure that, yes, indeed, as we have these levels developed, that those individuals that hold the positions are doing similar type functions. And then the last piece that we have to consider is compression, and that's the separation between the levels in an organization, as well as between superior and subordinate type roles. Now, when we built your model, we made sure that each pay grade has sufficient separation. And so we are not worried about your compression. We've automatically built that into the model for the county. There is a part of our report that does talk about how to manage this going forward. So you've put some resources into getting your salary structure updated. Now we want you to be able to manage it going forward as independently as the county wishes to do. And so number one, we do want to make sure that you are taking a look at the economic indicators on an annual basis and how much do those salary ranges need to move. The county has a very specific process that they use. They are not necessarily utilizing CPI. They're utilizing what's called ERI. And, that information was shared with me from Sarah and Michelle both. And Dr. McGrath and I studied it, and it seems to be working for the county. And I really am a believer in, if it's not broke, don't worry about fixing it. So that process is working for you. Continue to do that on an annual basis. And then just make sure that those annual adjustments are applied across the board so that your structure will stay competitive going forward. If you don't apply some sort of an economic indicator to your salary ranges like the rest of the world around you might be, you're going to find that you're going to start losing some ground against the 70th percentile. And that is really the key to making sure that your salary ranges stay competitive with where you want to be philosophically. We also then understand, appreciate, and absolutely encourage performance management. We have a lot of organizations that have said that they just cannot do that. And so we have to applaud the organization for keeping performance management in your structure. I met with all of your departments, like I said, a handful of weeks ago, and all of them really are very engaged in the performance management process and want to keep that going. And so we have built that in. That's how the employees will progress through the ranges. It will be performance driven. And then we do recommend that you do what we call a market update once every 3 to 5 years. You should be keeping some HR metrics that will tell you if you need to do something sooner, or if you can hold back a market update for an extra year. Take a look at your turnover, take a look at time to hire. Those types of metrics will help determine, is your salary schedule continuing to be market competitive, or do we have some areas that we need to take a look at? A market update is not what I did. I have completely reset your schedule. Now a market update will come in and take a look at your model and say, every couple of years, are you keeping up with the market, or are there some extra percentage points that we have to add to you in order to keep you at the 70th percentile? So it is a less invasive process than what I did with you here this year. With that said, I want to turn this over. I am going to do the screen, but I am going to turn this over to Michelle and Brooke to talk about compression and how we are going to resolve that once we have all of our employees in their ranges.
Yes, thank you, Milena. I put some animation on this slide, and poor Milena is going to have to click the buttons for me since she's driving. So you can go ahead and start clicking away. It's fine. So we want to talk a little bit about the process of finding a place in the range for everybody. So like Milena said, we have new ranges that she's built. We will have a group of people that fall below those minimums. So the very first thing we have to do is get those staff members up to the new, at least to the new minimum of the range. Brooke has created beautiful spreadsheets along the way. And so after I go through these few bullets, Brooke does have a couple examples that hopefully will pull all of this together so you can actually see the data in a spreadsheet that we use for the calculation. So just to bring people to the new minimum, the cost is approximately $730,000. We did put $3 million in the budget for this whole project. So I think we're faring relatively well. We do have one more cost piece that we'll talk about in a second. After we bring everybody to the new minimum, the next step would be calculating their years in position. How long have they been here? It's not how much experience they brought to the table when we hire them. It's how long have you been here at the county? So we look at hire date. If you've not had a promotion, I was hired in as HR manager, so my hire date, my date hasn't changed. If someone has a promotion date, we're going to look at that date. Or they transferred to another department. We'll look at the most recent date of any changes that were made for that employee. So determining their years in position. And then to calculate the compression adjustment that Milena was talking about, we look at, it's calculated based on your years in position using this chart up here. And this chart was born out of lots of conversations between Sarah and Brooke and I and Milena, and we had, 50 iterations of it. This is where we landed. So you can see your years in position and then how far through that pay range should I be, based on my years of service, my years in position. But in addition to the years in position, like Milena said, we're also wanting to progress people through these ranges based on their performance. So, theoretically, if I'm a very high performer, I'm probably going to move a little quicker through my range versus a lower performing employee. So of the compression amount, 25, and again, it should all pull together when Brooke pulls up her spreadsheets, but 25% of the compression calculation is based on your years of service. So if I have, I've been here 4 years, I should be progressed 15% through the range. So 25% of that 15% is just based on my years of service. The rest of that 15% that I could get is based on my performance. We are nearing performance evaluation season, if you will. So we are working on a form right now with our IT department, so we can do it all electronically, where we're going to have department heads and managers go ahead and do a quick evaluation and assign a score to their staff so we can include that in this calculation. The score will be 1 to 5. It's using the same scoring we use in our normal performance evaluation. So we're not doing anything different. This will just kind of be some pre-work, I guess, for department heads leading into the real performance evaluations. So the total cost for this is around $1.6 million. Again, this will ebb and flow, it'll change. We've had people leave, since we're working on some data that, as soon as we create a spreadsheet, it's out of date. So.
Well, and I want to make it clear that estimate is prepared that if every single employee in the organization gets the top score.
Right.
So it is the most conservative estimate possible. So that is an estimate prepared for that possibility, which will not be the case. But in purposes of the commission, we wanted to show you that max amount and demonstrate that we're inside our budget amount.
I mean, we'd love everyone to have 5s and, score and be that stellar employee. So that's what we're working toward. So given, deciding on how tonight goes, and if we get approval to move forward with this methodology, we would like to have the implementation done for the December 13th paycheck. End of year and beginning of year is, Brooke has audit coming up, starting her audit processes. We got payroll trying to do year end. So we really, really are doing everything we can to get this in, before the end of the year. So December 13th is our goal. We have a lot of back end work to do. Another quick note in the report, that 40-some page report Milena was talking about, it shows it has the job titles and the ranges. Again, that, like she said, we have a handful of ones that we still need to talk about. So there may be some changes to that model, but the ranges are the ranges. That won't be changing. Maybe where a title is placed in a range may change, but the ranges are set. Milena has done that work already. And like Milena said, we will bring the benefit stuff back. We've got open enrollment coming up in April-ish. So we'll talk to the healthcare committee and analyze all that benefit data after this dust settles, because it feels like we're in a little dustnado right now. So I'm going to let Brooke just show a couple quick spreadsheets that maybe pulls all of these bullets together and makes a little bit more sense.
And while Brooke's coming to the microphone, I want to just insert one thing, that methodology for the compression adjustment, we met with all department heads and elected officials, and this was based off of their feedback that they wanted the adjustments to be related to performance, not just years in position, that they didn't want a longevity styled adjustment, but that we wanted employees that if they are top performers, they're moving quickly to that market point as quickly as they can under that schedule. So that rate of growth, those percentages of growth will only happen if they're top performers. And that was based off the feedback from department heads.
Thank you, Sarah, and thank you, Michelle. Commissioners, good evening. I want to run through just a few quick scenarios for you guys so that you can see the way that the model will work for us to not only get our folks up to the new minimums for the ranges, but also to calculate some compression values. So this demonstration employee here, they've been moved into a range E. Their current hourly rate is $24.18, but the new minimum for range E is $22.64. So they're already being paid above the new minimum for the range. And then from that point, as Michelle said in the last slide, we look at their years in service. Well, this is a newly hired employee. So they're at 0 years of service, and if you recall on the last slide, that would be 3% into the new range. Calculating that value, that's $23.32, which is in that orange column, or I'm sorry, the purple column, where the purple column starts. And so this employee would not be eligible for a compression increase because they are well over 3% into the new range already. So their pay would essentially stay the same with their position placement in that range. Milena, may I have you go to the next slide? So this is scenario 2, and guys, I'm really sorry about how small this is because I was trying to take a mile-wide row and make it really small, but I had to show all of this stuff. So in this scenario, the staff placement was in range D. The employee in this scenario is not being paid at the new minimum for the range that they've just been placed into. So the pay is then adjusted to the new minimum. You can see that in the column that starts, it's yellow. Thank you, right here. So we're moving them from $19.74 now to $21.17 to get them to the new minimum for that range. And then we also then will look at their years in position. They've been with the county for 7 years. And that places them 24% into the new range. So they would be eligible for a $5.08 increase. Now, this is the part that Michelle was talking about that is subject to not only that years in position factor, but there's that performance component. And so what I've done here to illustrate how that can change the way that the compression adjustment is made is on the top row, I assigned a value of a 5. So this employee is the top performer. They're getting that full $5.08 increase with compression. We want to keep them. They're doing well in their position. The second row illustrates an employee who might not be a top performer. Maybe they're on a performance improvement plan. They have been called into the office a few times, and they got a performance value of a 2. Now, they likely already know this because they have been called into the office and they would not realize that full increase. They may see an increase of around $2.80. So just to illustrate for you guys how we've built in not only this year's in position component, but also really bringing in full circle the performance of the employee too. And, as Sarah said in that previous slide, the $1.6 million, it is assuming that everyone's at a 5. That's not the likely case. So that number will most likely go down. But one of the numbers that you will see go up just slightly if we do implement this for December would be that amount to get everybody to the new minimum for the range. So as we're hiring right now into the next 2 months, people are going to be coming in at the ranges that are existing right now. So we may see a minimal amount of increase to that line. But that's all I have for you guys tonight, and I'd be happy to answer any questions about this model and how it works.
Elena, can I have you stop sharing? Thanks.
You bet.
I would start with that the scenarios were very helpful. So just seeing that played through was very helpful for me. Commissioners, what questions do you want to start with?
So 730,000 gets everyone within that range, right? How many employees is that approximately? Sorry.
I was going to do that math.
Yeah, I know the number of employees eligible for compression, but I did not do that.
Okay.
I even thought about, I'm sorry. I could get that for you.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
There's probably a question for Milena. I know we looked across a lot of jurisdictions and other organizations, some of which we lose employees to because they're markets that are nearby, that are, or they're able to pay better than we are. Just, maybe this is just a ballpark, but where do we land relative to the city of Lawrence?
Good question. Well, what I would need to do is go back to the data to see where the recommended range is landing and then compare that against Lawrence's salary ranges. Because I don't know that I can honestly, and I don't think that I can answer that question without running an additional analysis. Now, we can certainly do that. I can do that offline and I can report that back to Sarah if we should do that for you.
And it may not be necessary to dig that far into the data, certainly not this evening. That was just a curiosity that I wrote down.
Yeah.
I'll take another one. So I know we did some salary adjustment a year ago for the sheriff's office, and it was anyone below sergeant and below, is that right? Or below sergeant? Lieutenant and below. So will this take into account, did we also evaluate the employees at the sheriff's office, or is that kind of running on a different track?
We're looking at those positions at captain and above and reviewing their market data for their ranges. And, there's only a handful of employees in that, and those positions. And so they would be included in this estimate.
Thank you.
I'd also like to add that we did include the civilian staff that are in the sheriff's office, so the administrative staff, budget, finance staff, folks without a gun, Can't lock people out.
And they were excluded from last year's
They,
analysis.
they were, yeah. So they were included with this study. So.
Thank you, that's really helpful.
I do want to talk a little, oh, go ahead.
I
Elena.
apologize. I just did a real quick look here at the costing and, or the last costing iteration that I have and know that this is a work in progress, a number, because Brooke and Michelle have done some work since the last time I've touched the document. But for the individuals that are not part of the sheriff's office, that work that you were just talking about, but just the core to this project is roughly about 300 employees. And my estimation is we've got about 135 of them that are having to get some sort of an adjustment to get into the minimum. So you're talking about almost half of your employees.
Thank you.
So
Say that's half of the employees that are a part of this study.
Correct.
And so that sort of gets to a question I have. You said you met with all the managers and talked about the positions and can you give us some sense from them, since you've talked to all of them, about what that competition is like? I know you shared some of that with us at your last visit with us, but for those who are tuning in for the first time here, or maybe just now attending the meeting, I'd like to hear, like, what's the reality? What's some of the stories that you heard about trying to recruit people when we are currently, for half of our employees, below the market value?
In my world, and I have a number of clients all across the United States, and certainly within the Midwest, there's a heavy emphasis there. And what you have going on, and I don't remember, I think we talked about your demographics, but last summer when we first were starting the project, and we take a look at what your age grouping is, and then what your years of service is within the organization. And some of those tables are in the report as well. And what you have is you do have a percentage of folks that they're younger and they're more mobile and they don't have a sense of dedication to the organization. They are not necessarily planning on being there for 35 years, like what you recognized earlier this evening. And what happens then is that your departments, they continue to recycle. They're recycling those folks in and out in their training. It's causing overtime, it's causing stress, it's causing burnout, because there are individuals that are left having to fill in the void of the operations, and you're going to start having operational impacts. Then the other part that is concerning, in just about every organization, is the folks that have been there for a handful of years, and they're the ones that are usually the folks that we aren't outwardly talking about, but they are very much at risk of losing, because they are skilled, they're experienced, and they're being poached. And they are literally being poached, where they may not even be looking for a job, and they get called up out of the blue and saying, I'm with organization XYZ, we have an opening, and we would like for you to apply and interview. And so what walks out the door is all of your experience that you have, and even possibly, depending upon the position, it might be your succession planning. And those are the folks that you want to hold on to, because they've been with your organization, they understand everything the Douglas County way, and provided that they are adequate performers, you want to hold on to them because they are your future. And then, the other part of this whole equation is that you are a public entity, which means everyone is on the state retirement system, and everyone that has been there for a long period of time. Your highest tenure person at the time that we did this was 38 years, I believe, and they're going to get ready to retire, and you're going to need to backfill those positions. And are you prepared to be able to backfill? I will tell you that when I met with all of your directors, I think that maybe some of them wish that all right, well, I wish that the market had maybe told us a little bit more, that they would have hoped that it would have been a little bit more. But most of them, I will tell you, it was absolute relief because they look at those new salary ranges and they know that they are going to be in a much more competitive area to be able to keep their people. And if they do lose someone, they're looking at those ranges. And I say, you have to look at, are you going to be able to recruit in your market? Because you know your market as much as I do. Can you recruit for that number? And they're telling me, yes, they feel that they are going to be in a much better position to be able to re-recruit when it's necessary.
So listening to that response, it sounded like we were leaning more on new employees and those who have been here a few years, but the compression schedule percentages reward those who have been here for longer periods of time. Did I misunderstand that?
No, it's more nuanced than that. You
Okay.
know, the compression adjustment just benefits anyone who's a current employee. So it isn't those that have been here longer. Actually, with as aggressively as Brooke has placed that, we're trying to get our top performers to market within 5 to 7 years. And we have to do that or we will lose them. And that is a sweet spot where they've become completely trained, they're completely fully functioning, but yet they are not necessarily dedicated to being here their whole careers, and that's okay. Now, I understand generations, not everybody does that. But if we don't if we don't get them to market, they will leave. So compression really is for anybody who's a current employee. And so it could be people that have really only been here a couple years that are doing a really great job, that are super skilled, that are picking up all the technology and different things that we're asking people to implement. And we want them to stay because we've made an investment in them and we want them to stay with our organization.
So that's why we're leaning harder towards the
Yes.
performance side
Yes.
than just those years. I mean, those
Yes.
years are in there, but they're a much smaller percentage of the overall weighting, essentially, to say on compression. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yes, and
Okay.
I can say, like, when we have this conversation with Milena, and she can correct me if I'm wrong here, most of her clients just do years in position. It's easy. Everybody knows when someone's started. To do performance is harder. You know, it requires more work on our organization to get that adjustment in place within the next 30 to 60 days. And it requires, engagement from supervisors, but it reflects what our organization feels that performance is key. And we've put a lot of work into our performance management plan and evaluations, and we take them seriously here. And actually, our department heads are frankly way better at it than I am. And they've been leading this work for a long time in terms of strong performance evaluation, strong performance management, and really evaluating folks where they need to be. So we want to make sure that we've got folks that, if they're a top performer, that we're doing the best we can to keep them. But if they're, and maybe, and I think this notion sometimes in the public sector is like, if they're not a top performer, they should just immediately leave. I mean, we're coaching, there's a lot of mentoring happening, there's a lot of growth opportunities. And so that will be reflected in those scores. It doesn't mean that that just because you don't get a 5 doesn't mean that you're a bad performer. And I just don't want to put that kind of notion out there, that we've got folks that we're working on training. They're doing a lot of work. They may not have been called into the office yet, as Brooke described, but they may be just new in their position and have things that they need to learn.
I appreciate that explanation, or that further sort of color to the context, Sarah. And I think I just want to put a point on why I think that's a value to have both and to evaluate both and, not only because I think is it reflective of us as an organization that really does value performance and the opportunity to grow and become more proficient and successful in your role. It's also, it operates as a natural incentive. So just length of time, which is a very narrow way to think about one's job choices and career pathways, is, I think, really limiting. So to me, it acts as a natural incentive to really put value on performance and know that there's opportunity to further increase your own wages through your own actions and not just longevity.
Mentioning that, I think we've been able to do a really good job focusing on performance the last couple of years because we've had a larger merit pool. It's a lot easier to focus on performance and reward those top performers when you have a 4% merit pool versus a 1%. So I think that's when things got real, when we were seeing those 4% merit pools. So we have been able to, I think, take really good care of high performers. So.
Can I add a comment?
Go ahead, Melina.
Thank you. When we do studies, and sometimes we do studies that are called total reward studies, and that was not what this study was focused on. This study was focused on wages with a portion of the benefits. But when we look at total rewards, we're talking about the total employee experience, and with that then is wages and benefits. It is the well-being. How are you taking care of your employees? It is how you're recognizing your employees, and then it's also how you are developing your employees. Then those 5 prongs really does make up the total employment experience, and you want it to be as positive as possible. So the fact that you are a county, which we don't often see, that is very supportive of performance management at the department level, and then I will say is it's a cultural, it's cultural within your organization, which means it's going to be there for years to come. It is part of the prong that is helping elevate your employees and bring them along for succession planning and total engagement. So even though we didn't look at your project from a total rewards emphasis, you're doing it. And the fact that the county was, that your administration and your department heads said that they wanted that to be part of this compression relief says a lot about your organization. And so, if this is adopted tonight, if you're agreeable to that, then I have to just applaud the organization, because you're accomplishing something that very few organizations are able to accomplish.
So I have a question, I think maybe more point of clarification. So this package and the compression that we're talking about would be implemented for existing employees. Beyond that, it would be within the merit pool that adjustments would be made. Is that correct? Like from here forward?
Yes, either merit pool or our market adjustments that we budget for each year. And then in 3 to 5 years is recommended we would probably need to go back out and just see how we're doing in the market. But yes, we will. This is a one-time adjustment, and this is a one-time adjustment based off of what we put forward on this comp plan. Moving forward, we will return to our regular schedule.
So this has been mentioned that this is a kind of resetting the schedule. This was a significant deep dive, and that every 3 to 5 years, we should look at more of a market update. When was the last time we did something of this level, this kind of resetting our pay schedule?
2013, so it's been 11 years, which is too long.
And within that time, have we done some of these more market updates other than what we did with the sheriff's
Yeah,
office?
I think we've done 2 in that time frame. We did one right before COVID, then that really wasn't as, it was just so hard because everything changed in that situation. That was our last one, was right before COVID.
So do we start planning now for when that next schedule reset would happen? Or is that just as we, every 3 to 5 years, look at these market updates, we'll kind of recognize when we're getting too far off?
Yeah, that's what, it's a little bit of both.
Okay.
But it's definitely been on my radar and Michelle's radar over the last couple of years. And then particularly after the issues, like when, we've had department heads coming to us and just saying, like, we're not competitive. We can't do this. You saw that most publicly last year with the sheriff's office and public safety and where we were with those issues.
Since so much of this is weighted towards performance, can you talk about how we compression check for how do we, suppose a manager could say, everyone gets a 5 because there's lots of pressure to increase pay, or I need to keep my budget in check because I'm trying to hire a different position, so everybody gets it. No one would ever do that, of course, right? Can you talk about sort of what the processes are internally for monitoring those performance evaluations, since they're so heavily tied to people's compensation?
Yeah, I mean, we set a timeline on, when we need performance evaluations back. We look, Brooke and I get together because she does the budgeting, the number piece of it. We look at every single score that comes in. I can say that when we were at a 1% merit pool, like I said, not a lot of skin in the game, I guess. So it was like, just give everybody one. I mean, it happened, not with everybody, but let's just do 1%. It's 1%. Now that we've got these larger pools, though, we are seeing variations of scores much more than we were before. So like Malena said, I think, we talk about it at department head meetings, we get together, we redid the performance evaluation form, just started using that last year, and we actually had someone, the people that did our last comp study sent us some industry standards and recommendations, and so we built it from there. So we had some outside expertise to kind of help us on what works.
Yeah, we developed a rubric that was used to count for those positions that did not have a specific, like sheriff's office is a very specialized performance evaluation tool. Emergency Communication Center has a very specialized performance tool. I think even Chad's got a really great performance tool that he uses. But for other departments, we created a rubric that really kind of standardized what those scores meant and created some information for department heads to use and supervisors to use when looking at that. Michelle and Brooke, when they say they look at all those scores, they also verify that it is inside the averages for what we need for our organization, and so that we have department heads stay inside that average for their department, and that's conversations that we have as a team. If somebody was not inside their average, they'd be having a conversation with me, and we'd be talking about it as we approach budget.
Yeah, our new form, really, we were scoring people between 1 and 9. Way too broad of a scale. We narrowed it 1 to 5. We gave clear definitions of what it means if I score someone between a 1 and a 2. This is what it means. So having those definitions, the form, I really like it because we used competencies. So we have competencies that we agreed on for the whole county. Everyone has the same 5 core competencies, and then depending on your department, you have some specialized competencies in there based on what you do. So it's really tailored more. It's not just boilerplate. So we were able to really tailor it to each department. So I think that helps also.
I just have one more question, and I know that benefits isn't something we're talking, it's for something down the line, but in most of my conversations with county employees, our benefits package is considered, a real selling point. So I was surprised to see some of the data coming back. Did we consider I think we called it a vacation, where we didn't have them pay in? Is that included in those numbers? Does that make sense in what employees pay? Am I making sense?
I think that was a while back when we, are you
When we
talking
did
about
that?
when we got rid of
Oh, where you could cash it out.
your vacation payout? Is that what you're talking about?
No, maybe I'm using the wrong words, but because we were self-insured and we had so much savings.
Oh, you're talking about our health insurance.
Yes, I'm talking about our health insurance. Was that included in there, or was that not included in there?
It was not included in
Okay.
there. So we didn't calculate what that benefit holiday was. That's the
Holiday
word you're
benefit,
looking
not
for.
vacation
Yeah,
holiday.
the premium
Yes.
holiday.
We didn't calculate that in that analysis, and I think it might help us. What I think we need to look at is some of our out-of-pocket maximums and some of the things that we've done with that. I think we were really aggressive trying to get our plan to a better financial position. And so but Commissioner, I'll commit that we're going to come back to you once we get through this and run through those benefit informations like pre-budget next year, and get some feedback, spend some time looking through it and helping that to frame our plan design. Because I too was surprised. I was surprised. I was like, oh man, we are not nearly as competitive as I thought we were on some things. So I do think that will be an emphasis in 2026. How do we make sure that our benefits plan is competitive compared to that data?
Thanks.
Commissioner Kelly had asked Malena for some of the stories that come along with not having adequate pay and having people poached beyond. But we have a lot of department heads here, and I would just want to open it up if there are any of you who are comfortable or interested in sharing some of those scenarios of why this is valuable to your department. And I did put you on the spot, but you chose to stay here and not have cookies.
I could address that. Within my own agency, we have about 30 employees, and I have about 7 that have been there for more than 10 years. And then I have all the rest that have been there for less than 3 years. The middle range, I have none. And that's a lot of that's because we get to that point where they get comfortable, and like they were talking about being poached, I'm losing people to Blue Cross Blue Shield even because they're going there and they're taking this wonderful experience and this wonderful education that they have within my organization, and they're taking it to somebody else. So to be able to bring us into the market and be able to compensate them where they feel comfortable staying, 90% of the people that leave my organization is because of compensation.
And Tony, you're talking about dispatchers primarily or other positions also?
No, mainly just dispatchers. We have very few auxiliary positions within my organization. 80% of our positions are dispatchers.
And it seems to me among dispatchers, it's really common to have a lot of turnover because it's a very high stress job, and that we have, just by the culture you keep there, have kept people in that position a lot longer than an industry standard. So if pay is the issue, I think the culture will keep them here.
Correct. Yeah, we do a very good job keeping our employees. And that's why it hurts so bad when we lose somebody that's been with us for 5 years, because it does take a whole mountain of effort to get them to that point, and then to see them leave, that's very difficult. So yes, we keep a lot of our employees and we have a great culture. But it's just going to be nice to be able to have something to give them, to be able to keep them energized in our environment.
Thank you.
So what I will say is that if we want to look at how this package can help the county as a whole, I think the package that you all passed for us may be a good stick by which we measure. So when we came to you all last year and needed to get our pay up to make us competitive, to keep, hire, and retain, we were roughly 40% short when it came to deputies and corrections officers, uniformed personnel. Since implementing that, and you all passed that through, put us not at the top of the market, because we have a neighbor to our east that we cannot compete with, but it put us in a very, very strong position within the market. And since that time, we are now almost fully staffed. So within 1 year, simply by moving our competitive wages into the market deeper, we have, and as you just said, and as Tony said, then it becomes my job for the culture to keep them here. And we just finally lost in 1 year, we just finally lost our first corrections officer who's been with us for more than a year and a half. And he's leaving to go to a bank because he just doesn't want to do the work that we do. And I completely respect that. But we have not lost anybody to another agency. We have not lost anybody to something similar to this. And not one person has left for the pay, quote unquote. So I think that I just want to let you all know publicly, and the people watching, both people watching at home, that the work that is done here can have extremely lasting effects on our retention as we move forward. So I just wanted to get that out there.
I appreciate that. Thank you. It's really
Yeah,
helpful.
absolutely.
Any others? Thank you, Jimmy.
Oh, no.
No, this is Jimmy Wilkins, Director of Building Maintenance for the county. My recent story is we were hiring a building maintenance position at the jail, and we opened it. We received 11 applications for it. Only 3 of them had any experience in building maintenance. So I set up interviews. One person did not show up. Second person showed up, asked what the salary was, and said, "I will not work in the jail for that salary," and he left. We hired the third person. We had no choice. We can't leave the jail without maintenance people. So luckily we got a good person, but we had no choice but to hire the one person that would stick around and actually come to the interview.
All right, anybody else? I do appreciate those. Those are very helpful. Commissioners, do you have other questions or thoughts?
No questions. I'll save my thoughts for.
Okay. This is a public comment item, public item. Is there anyone who is present with us in the room who would like to give public comment on this item? Come on up.
Gene Dorsey, Lawrence, Kansas. State law says that the county commission will approve all elected officials' salaries. And in looking at Appendix A, I notice almost all of the elected officials are in the R, I believe it's R category. But I noticed the county commissioners aren't included on the schedule. Should some elected officials be taken off, or should you add county commissioners into the schedule? Thanks.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who'd like to give public comment on this? Sarah, do we have anyone online with a hand raised?
I don't see any hands raised online.
Okay. Closing public comment and bring it back to the commission. I will go ahead and ask Brooke and Michelle if you want to talk about, I assume that county commissioners are not subject to compression. Our years of service and evaluation
Correct.
don't
Yeah,
really
we
qualify.
did not include county commissioners in this analysis, but we did include line level countywide elected positions that have professional counterparts to be compared to.
Yeah, we'll keep county commission. County commission will stay in the range that you guys are in right now, which it's, I don't know.
ZZ.
I don't know where that came from, but that's where you're at, so.
And question for Sarah on that. We approve the commissioner's line of the budget every year within our budget process. That is part of our process.
Correct.
And it is separate from all other salaries and all other discussions. So
Correct.
thank you.
Surprised you didn't just give us pay grade A. So we would fall somewhere between custodian 1 and below. So, and we don't even have a pay grade for that. Commissioners, other thoughts or motions?
I just wanted to appreciate all the work. I really enjoyed reading the report, which I can't say that I was necessarily expecting to, but I found it very informative, sincerely, and it gave a lot of context to some sort of surface level discussions and conversations about compensation and compression and what the philosophies behind that are. So I just wanted to appreciate the work put into the report and all of the staff time and the department heads really bringing candid feedback and necessary intel for administrative staff and for consultants at McGrath to know what the reality of the situation is that we are working with right now. So I'm just really grateful for that, and I don't want to let it go by without acknowledging that there's an incredible amount of time and energy that's been put into providing this report and giving us this recommendation. And I'm personally really supportive of the recommendation. I'm glad to see that we are that we're looking to be more towards the top of the market and be sincerely competitive. I think that that's what an employer of our size in a community, and we are one of the largest employers in Douglas County, that's what employers of large sizes do, to lead by example and create opportunities for people to work in a community that they that they love and that they want to stay in, and to be able to feel like they have opportunities to do that. For people who are dedicated to public service, who want to stay in our sector and not move to the private sector, it makes us more competitive on that edge. And I just think there are a lot of reasons to be supportive of that, of this. And to Sarah's point earlier, it's been such a significant amount of time at this point since we've done a compression adjustment, that it's long overdue. And this report did a good job of giving us a synopsis of the context of the past 4 years in particular, and how all the changes through and since the pandemic and what that has done to the economy, to the labor market, among other factors, is really, it was helpful for me to see that articulated, and to know that that really has been the experience of our organization and so many other organizations, is to try and keep up with new demands of the labor market, valid demands, I want to say, right? And that we've got some catching up to do, and this is what this represents. So I'm really pleased with where it landed. I think that it is important for us as local government, and as I said, one of the largest employers in the county, to really lead with paying our employees what they're worth, with recognizing the value that they bring not only to our organization, but to the community at large, and what a huge service that is. So just want to be really grateful for everybody that put time and effort into this, and share with fellow commissioners and the public that I'm really pleased to see this. I'm hopeful about what it does for our retention and recruitment, and that it also gives us a bit of a resetting to come up with a good path forward about how we evaluate and review this. And so I was happy to see that part of the report also, that there was sort of a roadmap laid out about how to make sure we're analyzing and evaluating that data annually, as well as every 3 to 5 years on a larger scale, and that's a constant conversation to be having with the county commission, so that we're aware of the situation. We may not have to be playing catch up, after a 11-year gap.
I first would say I appreciate that we got much of this information in June and had some time to digest it, ask questions again when this came up, and it's been very clear and easy to understand, and I appreciate that, because there's a lot that goes into getting us here. I've had to do this work for smaller organizations, and you really feel like you're shooting in the dark. The amount of background information that went into this gives me a lot of trust in what's being recommended, and I appreciate that a lot.
So it's clear that you've been very thoughtful about your approach. We set a budget for it. We're within that budget. And I appreciate all the work that's gone into it. But aside from that, I took a minute and just took in the people that are in this room. And it reminds me that one of the greatest gifts that I have as a commissioner is all the people that I've met who work for Douglas County. We are tremendously fortunate, the people that we have that work here, and we want to keep them. We want to reward them if they perform well, and if they don't perform perfectly, Michelle, we're going to coach them up so that they do. I think that's what you said, and so I think that's what we have to keep in mind here. I'm so proud that Douglas County doesn't shoot for average. Like, let's shoot for bigger than that. Let's be better than that. Let's know that we can have really great employees and really great government service that really supports the community that they're tasked to support. And that approach to this feels very solid to me, and just really appreciate that, and appreciate all of our employees who do that hard work every day, and are such a pleasure to work with.
We do have phenomenal employees here, and it's been my pleasure over the 2 years to get to know so many folks that do work for Douglas County, that I can't imagine better people in those positions. There's a lot of really fabulous talent here, and I don't want to lose them, train them up here and lose them to other places. So there's value in that. Commissioners, anything else or a motion?
As Commissioner Reed, I am glad to make a motion to authorize the staff to implement the classification and compensation study recommendations.
Second?
Moved and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you all, and I very much appreciate it being under budget. That moves us to our next item, and that is an executive session for which I have a motion. And that is, I move that we recess into executive session to discuss an employee contract. The justification is to discuss personnel matters of non-elected personnel and for consultation with the county councilor, which would be deemed privileged in the attorney-client relationship. Attending the executive session will be Michelle Spreer, HR Manager, Miliana Mays of McGrath Consulting Group, and John Bullock, the Douglas County Councilor. No action will be taken during executive session. We will return to an open meeting at this room. How long do you suppose we need?
20 minutes, so
It's 7:20. This is my motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. We'll be back at 7:20. Hello, everyone. We're going to take 10 more minutes. We will come back at 7:34. Thank you. We'll take an additional 5 minutes, and I'll put us back at 40 past. Thank you. All right, so there's no action from that, and then we move to appointments. Commissioners, do we have any active appointments at the moment?
I don't think so.
None that I'm aware of.
Okay, that puts us to our Sarah's memo.
thank you, Commissioners. My weekly memo is attached. Just want to really highlight that next week we have the launch of the Community Health Improvement Plan. And that's really an important document for us. It really guides a lot of our work in human services. So encourage if commissioners are going to attend, that way we can notice it, but it's a really important document for us. And then you've just got some monthly updates. We do not have a work session next week for the meeting. We do have one on the 23rd on a crisis response coalition that we're looking to form. And then we do not meet the 30th. And then I do not have work sessions for those next first two meetings in November, but we're still working on some things. So commissioners, that's all I have.
Commissioners, do you have anything else to share?
No, but I will, for Robin's purposes, mention that I do plan to go to the CHIP launch that Sarah just mentioned. I don't know where Heather came from, sorry. I didn't know if any other commissioners, and there was another thing that I thought I had on my calendar for next week, but.
Rooftop solar, does that ring a bell for anybody? Okay.
No, actually, but you made me think of something else that is not until November, so it's a moot point right now.
It's possible that I will spend some time at the Empower Expo. I won't be there the whole time. I don't know if anybody else is going to that tomorrow.
I will not be there.
I will not be there.
Okay. So we can notice the CHIP as a possible one that we might have multiple commissioners at. Anything else?
Nope.
All right, we are adjourned. Thank you all.